Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Boston City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo. I'm chair of the Committee on Government Operations. It is Monday, March 20th, 2023, and we are here today in the Ionella Chamber for a hearing on Docket 0138, an ordinance regulating honeybees, and Docket 0139, a text amendment to the Boston Zoning Code with respect to honeybees, sponsored by Councilors Ruth C. Louis Jen, Kenzie Bach, and myself. This hearing is being recorded and is being live streamed at www.boston.gov/citycounciltv and on Xfinity 8, RCN 82, FiOS 964. If members of the public would like to provide public testimony, they can sign up at the sign-in sheet near the podium. To my left, members of the public may also provide testimony via Zoom or provide written comments to the committee that will be made part of the public record and shared with all of our councilors. Members of the public should email Christine O'Donnell at christine.o'donnell, ODONNELL, at boston.gov to request the testimony link for public testimony via Zoom. Members of the public can also email the committee email at ccc.go@boston.gov to provide written testimony. I'd like to stress that we need information from people who are providing public testimony via video conference, especially if you are dialing in with a phone number or if you have an unrecognizable username. Please make sure your name appears on the Zoom as it does on your request to testify. Docket 0138 seeks to create a new ordinance under Chapter 16, Section 1.27 of the City of Boston Code for the regulation and enforcement of keeping honeybees. This ordinance sets the maximum number of hives on a given lot or roof for personal consumption of honeybee products at 3, and specifies the amount of feet a hive can be placed from an abutter, sidewalk, and/or roof. This ordinance also gives authority to the Inspectional Services Department and Animal Control to enforce all violations or exceptions. Docket number 0139 is a text amendment and acts as a counterpart to Docket 0138. This matter would remove bee regulations from the City of Boston's zoning code and place them in a municipal ordinance. This would give the City of Boston the authority to lift beekeeping bans in every neighborhood while maintaining rules for beekeepers to abide by. This hearing is an opportunity to hear from the administration, advocates, as well as public testimony on the matter in front of us this afternoon. As chair, I'm going to allow my council colleagues to give opening remarks. We're going to begin with the original sponsors, which are Councilor Louis Jen and Bach. Councilor Bach will be joining us shortly, and then I'll turn it over to the administration and advocates. But Councilor Louis Jen, if you have any opening statements, now is the time.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to thank, before I really dive in, want to thank the advocates, fellow Hyde Park residents, for bringing this issue to my attention. It's an incredible privilege to be able to represent the city at large. And this issue is a testament to that. It was brought to my attention in conjunction with State Representative Rep. Consalvo, also in Hyde Park, as I am, and brought to our attention by Hyde Park beekeepers, all of whom are here with us today, either virtually or in person, Val, Sheila, and Jim, because sometimes we make it harder than it should be to do basic things that are not only good, bring us personal joy, but are good for the city and our ecological health. So thank you, and thank you to the administration for being willing to have this conversation and to think about how we make our rules easier and more friendly to the average resident, both in this hearing and in the meetings that we've had before this, and maybe in the meetings that we should have had before this. I just thank you for your flexibility and for this conversation. Study after study has found that cities are not the ecological deserts we think them to be. Rather, our city can be and should be a robust environment for all of us and for all of our living creatures, including bees. Cities offer bees a surprisingly diverse choice of plants among parks, playgrounds, backyards, street trees, and median strips. And I should say that prior to this, I am by no means a bee expert, but a lot of, in working in partnership with our residents and our constituents, really learned about the environmental and ecological benefits of beekeeping. We know that the city of Boston is engaging in a growing urban agricultural movement that's turning empty lots and rooftops into productive landscapes. Studies by our own best bees have found that urban beehives actually have a higher winter survival rate and produce 56% more honey than their country cousins. Over the past few decades, environmental concerns have brought a growing interest in how and where our food is produced. Sustainable food movements have helped spawn a renaissance in urban farming and beekeeping. When permitted by right, beekeeping can be a critical component in the movement to make cities greener. This is a map, not sure if folks can see, of our current zoning, where beekeeping is allowed as of right, which is in very small pockets here. We see it in West Roxbury, pockets in Alston Brighton, some pockets in Beacon Hill, and yellow is conditional, where there's a conditional use, again, sparingly throughout our city. In much of our city, it's a forbidden use, and that's why we're here today, to make that a lot easier. Honeybees play a critical role in our food system, accounting for the pollination of over 85 different crops. Without honeybees, our agricultural system would collapse and the population of native pollinators would be unable to replace the capacity of honeybees. Local honey, derived from a host local Boston flowers and plants, can strengthen our immune system. As an avid tea drinker, I always put honey in my tea and realize the value of local honey for those who have allergies or other issues. While urban beekeeping practices are similar to those in suburban and rural areas, urban beekeepers face unique challenges when it comes to hive placement, human/bee interaction, and habitat loss. The main challenge isn't the lack of places to put beehives in our cities, but challenging the status quo. With space at a premium in cities, it's often hard to find ground-level plots of land that aren't already in use. Instead of looking on the ground, oftentimes we should look up, and I know there are folks who are going to speak to that as well, to building in other places. While honeybees have been bred for safety and are no threat to humans if left undisturbed, those close quarters people live and work in cities mean that hive sites must be chosen carefully to minimize human-bee interaction, but to also do a lot more in the education front so that folks are less afraid about things like stings and realize that bees are not out to harm people. This is based on a misperception. The idea that bees are out to harm are based on a misperception that bees are aggressive insects, and cartoons featuring swarms of angry bees chasing panickers haven't helped. Swarming bees, though, are actually the least likely to harm people. When they swarm, they've been sent out with their new queen, engorged with honey, to start a daughter colony, and are concerned with one thing only: finding a safe place to hive. Urban environments are as varied as the cities we live in. They can be cold or hot, dry or wet. They can remain relatively constant or show extremes of weather. Because of this, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to urban beekeeping, and so I'm excited for this conversation because I think we're all on board on changes, and so this is all a discussion about how we make those changes, bring those changes to life. So again, thank you, and I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you. We've been joined by Councilor Murphy. I'm going to make my opening, and then I'll go to you, Councilor Murphy.
Thank you.
I'm honored and grateful that Hyde Park, the neighborhood I was born and raised in and grown up in, is leading this effort for beekeeping in the city. I actually am also an avid tea drinker, and that led me down sort of a rabbit hole of looking into honey and realizing that honey is actually impacted greatly by where the bees are pollinating and what plants or flowers they're pollinating from and how that impacts all of those things, which then led me down the rabbit hole of finding out that from a biodiversity standpoint, we've seen bees steadily and bee populations steadily on decline in a way that is increasingly alarming for the national and international landscape of our ecosystems and our biodiversity. And so this is timely, in my opinion. This is something that should be done. I'm grateful to Councilor Louis Jen for her leadership in bringing this forward and figuring out how to make all the pieces fit together. I agree with you in the general fear of bees, I think, is largely has to do largely with the allergies that folks have to bees, but perhaps the depiction of bees and ants played a role. And so I think this is something where we can both further conversation on what healthy biodiversity looks like and why bees are important, create ecosystems that support those, while also sort of dispelling, I wouldn't call it misinformation, but a lack of education on the importance of bees to that ecosystem and the lack of information on how bees within the city can help contribute to not just the city, but sort of these national and international solutions to these problems. And so I'm grateful that we are moving forward on this. I look forward to this, and I am grateful to the folks who have made this something that they are fighting for here today and every day. And so with that, I'm going to go to Councilor Murphy, and if Councilor Bach gets here, then we'll go to her for an opening. Otherwise, we'll go to the administration. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, and thank you to the lead sponsor for filing this. I love honey. I like bees. I've never been afraid of them, but I definitely like bees. And like my former colleagues said, I've always used honey in my tea, grew up with honey around, but also a frequenter of farmers markets when I'm out of the city, but also all of the farmers markets we have around the city. And oftentimes I'm buying a jar that says like the Carlisle Farm or Cape Cod Farm. So I would love to be bringing home honey from, the bees from Hyde Park and others. So, but also know that this hearing, and we have Chris here from ISD and the administration to talk to us. I also agree that the rules should be easier, but there must be a reason, or if there isn't, then we can easily change them. But hear from the administration, like what restrictions we do have on the books and why, and then we could have a conversation about how do we make it easier to, for our honeybee lovers in the city. So thank you for this hearing and this conversation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bach.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and my apologies for being late. I'm really excited to be a co-sponsor on this and grateful to Councillor Louis-Jean for proposing it and letting me join her. Bees are, and of course the chair as well, bees are kind of one of those, when we see our bee populations decline, it's kind of a classic tragedy of the commons situation where everybody says like, gee, it would be great if we had pollinators out there and if we had these, robust ecosystems, and yet no one actually can make a home for the bees. So I'm really glad to see so many residents like taking it into their own hands to help do this thing that is not just a nice thing for people to do for themselves and for those who get to consume the honey, but also just for the whole ecosystem. Like it really is a kind of public good in an ecosystem services sense. And so to me, looking at ways in which I think we've sort of unintentionally backed into as a city, making it really onerous for people to do this legitimately, and therefore kind of, skewing the pool of who's going to do it based on what their risk tolerance is or how comfortable they are with, that they've crossed every T and dotted every I. Like, I just think we should make something that's good and a benefit to all of us easier. So I really appreciate Councillor Louis-Jean raising this. I have a couple of times in my life been fortunate enough to live close to somebody keeping bees and enjoyed the honey that they've provided, but also just enjoyed the whole ecosystem that the bees are a part of. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And so with that, I'd like to introduce members of the administration who are here today. Shani Fletcher, Director of Grow Boston for the City of Boston, and Chris English, the Chief of Staff for the Inspectional Services Department for the City of Boston. Floor is yours if you have any opening, or if you want to go directly to questions, that's fine as well, but if you have any opening statements or introductions.
Thank you, Chair Arroyo, Councillor Louis-Jean, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Bach. My name is Chris English. I am the Chief of Staff and the Assistant Commissioner of Plans and Zoning at the Inspectional Services Department. Thanks for holding this hearing, inviting us here today. As the department responsible for enforcing building, sanitary, and zoning codes in the City of Boston, ISD is the primary city agency responsible for permitting the keeping of hives and bees. The department shares the council's and the community's desire to make beekeeping more accessible and allowable and easier to do. As we convene to discuss possible improvements to the system, I thought it would be a good idea to provide a quick overview of the current regulations and how we permit that in the city. So today, accessory keeping of bees is regulated under Article 89 of the Boston Zoning Code. This article sets forth dimensional requirements and stipulates where beekeeping is allowed, conditional, and forbidden across the city. It also stipulates the number of hives and the specific location on a lot where they must be located, among other requirements. Applicants must submit a long-form building permit application to change the use and occupancy of their property to include this accessory use. This application process is significant. It includes a series of documents that support the application, including certified plot plans, site plans that are stamped by a registered design professional that indicate where on the property the hives would be located, and indicate all the dimensional requirements related to setbacks. These Applications are reviewed by ISD's plans examiners for compliance with the zoning code and the building code. Applications for beekeeping that do not meet the dimensional requirements of the zoning code or are located in zoning subdistricts where it is conditional or forbidden are issued a zoning code refusal letter. Those applicants must seek relief through the form of a variance or a conditional use permit from the Zoning Board of Appeal. Start to finish, this process can take several months to complete, if not a year. It can serve as a barrier to residents who want to keep beehives on their property, and it creates a system where residents may operationalize a beekeeping program on their property without the proper permitting to avoid the cost and the time that permitting takes. This leaves the department without a complete inventory of these operations across the city. So as you explore options for improving the system and making it more accessible, allowable, and easier to do, while also maintaining an adequate level of safety, which many of you have mentioned, we are ready to work very closely with the council and the community on moving that forward. I will turn it over to Shawnee Fletcher, who's the Director of Grow Boston, for an opening statement, and then we're happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councilors, for having me. My name is Shawnee Fletcher. I'm the Director of Grow Boston, the Office of Urban Agriculture, which lives within the Mayor's Office of Housing. On behalf of Mayor Wu, Chief Sheila Dillon, and Grow Boston, I'd like to express our enthusiastic support for the expansion of allowable beekeeping across Boston. Grow Boston was established about a year ago by Mayor Wu and works to increase food production in the city by supporting gardeners, farmers, and beekeepers, as well as other food producers. We help create gardens and farms on former city land, build individual raised bed gardens and rooftop farms, provide educational opportunities, and invest in innovative food production strategies. Pollinators play a critical role in the ecosystem overall and our food system specifically, and honeybees are a significant proportion of the population of pollinators. Urban beekeepers can play an important role in supporting the health of the honeybee population, in addition to creating the right circumstances for the production of honey, a useful and, as we all seem to agree, delicious food item. The creation of a municipal ordinance making beekeeping allowed while providing reasonable restrictions on that activity will make this important agricultural and environmental activity substantially more equitable. Currently, with beekeeping restricted through the zoning code, very few neighborhoods have beekeeping as an allowed or even conditional use, as Councilor Lejeune laid out. The vast majority of the city, particularly neighborhoods experiencing low food security and environmental justice disparities, is currently forbidden from keeping bees on their property and must go through the Zoning Board of Appeals in order to do so. Removing beekeeping from the zoning code and placing it in the municipal code will mean that many more beekeepers, especially those in low and moderate income communities of color, will have access to this important activity and clear guidance on how best to keep bees in ways that are well integrated in residential areas and favorable to residents. We look forward to working with the council, ISD, and beekeeping advocates to refine language in the ordinance and zoning text amendment and supporting the implementation of this important legislation, as well as providing educational opportunities regarding beekeeping as we move forward. Thank you, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have for us.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge we've been joined by Council President Flint, who is here with us today. I don't know if you would like to give any openings before we go to questions.
I'm fine, Council Arroyo. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to go to Councilor Louis-Jean if you have questions for the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again to Chris and to Shawnee for both being here, for Chris, your work on behalf of ISD, and Shawnee for your work with Grow Boston. I understand this is your first time before the City Council, and you did a terrific job with your presentation, even got a joke or two in there, so well done. So Chris, as you laid out, right now, zoning, beekeeping is currently covered under Article 89, and the process could be an arduous one. I showed this map that shows very few places where it's green, where it's an as-of-right use, and as-of-right makes it easy. You don't have to check in, you don't have to ask questions, you can just go about and do your thing. But that's very scant in very few places in the city. And because ISD regulates, has control over the enforcement of these uses, I want to know, have there ever been any fines issued, for beekeeping?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay.
No.
How many variances have been requested for beekeeping over the last 5 years?
It's a small number.
Okay.
I'm happy to follow up with a specific number, but I can tell you it's very infrequent, small number.
And I wonder if that's in part because folks think that it's complicated and so aren't even just bothering with the process, or just because they're just not in need for variances. But I'd assume that it was probably the former, right? And I just wanted to lay that foundation for better understanding of what we're doing here and why we want to take it out of zoning and put it into a municipal ordinance. Who has the authority to regulate the distance, the setbacks? Like that's where and when beekeeping can happen.
So that's outlined in the zoning code, which the ISD is not the author of the zoning code, we are the enforcer of it, but those dimensional requirements are set forth in the code if they were in a different format. So if they were authorized under city ordinance, for example, and ISD was empowered to enforce the stipulations of that ordinance, then it would fall on ISD to continue enforcing it.
Exactly. So right now, it's within ISD's purview, within zoning, to enforce it. So moving it from zoning code to municipal code, if written and as it is written, would maintain that ISD continues its enforcement obligations. It changes the regulatory scheme of beekeeping, but it doesn't change sort of where the powers lie, and makes it just easier for our constituents. Would ISD have to create exemptions and standards if they weren't enforcing it through zoning?
If we were enforcing this as an ordinance as opposed to the zoning code, we would have to stand up a sort of regulatory structure for the permitting and the review of those applications, as well as our operational procedures on how we review, inspect, and or respond to complaints or concerns about those. We would generally do that empowered under a city ordinance to adopt departmental regulations in the form of a commissioner's policy bulletin. So that we do that administratively based on the contents of whatever the ordinance might look like.
And has that happened before? Are there examples in which ISD does that?
We've done that many times. Recently, the retail residential kitchens ordinance was adopted that ISD enforces. The condo conversion ordinance, I think the Housing Stability and Notification Act. We've gotten a series of recent ordinances, but yes, it's common.
Okay, so it's doable, it's possible, and we can make it happen this way.
Definitely.
Because I'm just of the belief, and I know others are, is that our zoning code is already complicated and difficult for, our residents to understand what's in the base code, what's not in the base code. And I think moving it to municipal ordinance makes it a lot easier for our residents. Curious, and if you don't, we can go to another question here. But do you know the process for a text amendment to the zoning code for us to take it out of zoning? Because that is the first step we need to take in order to make this, put this into municipal code.
I think generally there's a couple options for petitioning the zoning commission. A party may proceed through the BPDA for a review of a zoning code amendment that goes before the BPDA board after a community process with a recommendation to pursue it before the zoning commission. I believe the council also has the ability to petition the zoning commission directly with an adopted order from the body.
Okay. And then regarding enforcement, how do ISD tickets work compared to BPD or other department tickets for enforcement?
Tickets are interesting. Many of our ordinances that we enforce involve a ticketing scheme where violations would result in the department issuing out a fine. When we issue a fine, technically, once that fine's paid, the violation is closed. Most of our ordinances or codes that we regulate are remedial for enforcement. So say we get a complaint that somebody is doing something without a permit. Our response is to go out, inspect, issue a violation with an order to apply for and secure a permit to do that. The department wants compliance with the codes, not necessarily to hurt people on sort of the financial side, but really to, if there's a code that we are enforcing, we want to make sure that people are complying with it. So it's a remedial thing, is our preferred method.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate, I think it was, Shawnee, you mentioned how it's important for us to think about, what does this change, we hope, makes beekeeping more equitable. And so when I think about fines, I always think about, what are the equity implications of that? And so it's important to highlight that ISD's intent here is not to, be going after folks with a stick, but to make sure that folks are following complying with the law. I know we had talked about permitting versus making this by bringing it into municipal code, which is what we want to do, is just make it a permissible use throughout our city. And then if folks have or request or need variances from the standard that we create, that should be as wide net as possible to capture as many beekeepers and to set what we think is a good standard, taking into consideration all of the concerns. Wondering if what your thoughts from the Inspectional Services Department division is in terms of making it a permissible use under municipal code, and then making, setting out standards clearly that adhere to the standards of beekeepers that we'll hear from soon, and taking into consideration the concerns of neighbors or public safety concerns, and only at that point requiring variances, whether your department would be able to met those out, and what your thoughts are on that process.
Sure. I think as long as the department is empowered to issue or grant a waiver or some exemption to the regulations as they are written in the code, we can do that. We did that with the plastic bag ban ordinance, where there was a waiver and extension process that was built into that ordinance that the department could review on a case-by-case basis, and then under our discretion issue an approval or an extension. So there is precedent for it, and we can do that.
Thank you, Chris. And then just, Shawnee, how am I doing? Am I okay on time?
I'm actually not keeping time because there's only 4 of us here.
Okay, all right.
So
Okay.
I know that this is.
So I can talk for 30 more minutes?
I would hope
30
not,
more minutes, all right. 30, Shawnee, I
round.
have 30 minutes of questions
I'm ready.
just for you, so I'm happy first time. Have you, and thank you for your work with Grow Boston, have you heard or from our beekeeper community about things that we can do, or what information do you have, or does Grow Boston right now have on the needs of beekeepers in the city? Or you talked a little bit about the contributions that beekeeping has for our ecosystem, our environmental, for environmental justice, for food justice. Wondering if you could just dig a bit deeper here to see if you've heard from those who are practitioners, our residents, our constituents, even if it's commercial beekeepers, what you can tell us, what your office has heard.
Yeah, we've talked informally and met with a group of beekeepers since the filing of this ordinance and zoning amendment, and had some good conversations. I mean, I will say just generally that beekeepers are, yes, definitely very important to supporting the ecosystem that keeps the human species alive, and making it easier for beekeepers to operate and easier for residents to have hives, I think is going to be really important as we're, already in a time of great environmental crisis, and trying to do whatever we can to both address the crisis as it evolves, but also make sure that we are thinking expansively about basically making sure that everyone has the opportunities to engage with food production, engage with environmental, whether it's activism or just contributing as they would like to addressing these crises. So, and the third thing would be that just in general, environmental, all kinds of environmental crises disproportionately impact low-income communities and communities of color, and so. I am familiar with the map that you showed, and don't know if people were able to see it at home, but it's like so almost the entire city is, not allowed to keep bees right now, and all of the communities, neighborhoods in our city that are primarily or predominantly communities of color, low-income communities, it's almost entirely forbidden, beekeeping is. So I think it's very important that we make it more possible for folks to be able to participate in this activity. And in terms of the conversations we've had with beekeepers, I mean, I think there are, thinking about like the kinds of restrictions that are placed on beehives and placement of beehives, there's very little. There are sort of minor differences in what people think makes sense in terms of regulations, but in general, people are very, I think, in agreement about a lot of the basic restrictions that would make sense to put in or that are currently in place, and have really good suggestions for improvements. So, yeah, I think our conversations have really, there's a really strong beekeeping community in Boston, and I know that they're going to get a chance to speak soon, which is great. And we look forward to also staying in conversation with them as we move forward.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
And just on your point, Shani, want to highlight that there's cities that do things differently. Cambridge allows regulates beekeeping where it's allowable by right. But there are still regulations that make it a bit onerous, so we want to make sure that we don't go down the too onerous route. And New York City, for example, allowed beekeeping in 2010 and has just a simple registration process without regulations. And we're talking about densely populated area as New York City, where it's allowed as a right without regulations. And I haven't seen news articles about things going awry, so just wanted to put that on the table, and really glad that your office has reached out and has been listening to the beekeeping community here. So I'm excited to continue partnering with you in this work. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That 30 minutes went by really quickly.
So fast.
Yeah.
Thank you. Time flies when you're having fun. Councillor Bach as an original co-sponsor.
Time flies when you're a bee.
And then Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just from an order of operations perspective, does the department have an opinion on, like, presumably if we pass the ordinance and the zoning amendment through council at the same time, the ordinance would go into effect with the mayor's signature, but the zoning amendment would then need to go to the zoning commission, and so there'd be like a little bit of delay. But I assume that once we get an ordinance underway, we can kind of like start the process of implementing it while we're waiting on that. Is that fair?
Sure, and I think it could be written into the ordinance that it's effective upon adoption of a zoning code amendment to make sure that those two are locked up in at the same time. In the interim, the department would go through the process of setting up our administrative procedures to make sure that we were prepared for implementation.
Got it. And I really appreciate you guys coming and just being, obviously like willing and excited partners on this kind of overall front. And totally fine if, I don't know, Mr. Chair, what the sort of working session, et cetera, plans are, but did you guys have any specific like language change proposals that you wanted the council to start thinking about today?
I don't think we have any specific language suggestions. I mean, I know there's certain areas that maybe the beekeeping advocates will speak to too, but that I've spoken with them about that they would love to be slightly different. And I think there's some additional places in the zoning amendment that bees are where bees are mentioned that could be removed. So there's some very technical things, but I don't think there's any major language changes that we'd have today.
From a policy perspective, general policy goals, no.
Okay, so it's still some like redrafting conversation, et cetera, to have, but nothing where it's like this currently addresses this and we wouldn't want that or something like that. Okay. No. That's great. That's just, it just shows you that Councilor Lujan is a lawyer and, writes good legislation. And as you say, obviously, part of the reason that we have the hearing is to hear from our advocates and, with the community that we're trying to help grow by doing this. So obviously, I'm sure there will be ideas that come from that too. I wonder are there other, like within the Grow Boston portfolio, are there other things like this that the council should start thinking about, like things that we just sort of make difficult from a kind of urban farming and agriculture and ecosystem perspective that, first the bees, but then put a little bug in our ear about something in the future?
Right.
Right?
Yes, the puns abound. Yeah, I would say that I was actually thinking when Councilor Lejeune was speaking that the regulations as they currently stand came about when Article 89 was established about 10 years ago, and that process was sort of a first effort to make any kind of regulations about urban agriculture, and it covers commercial farming, and it covers various, like sort of ground level farming, rooftop farming, innovative production, other kinds of innovative production strategies. And it also covers keeping of hens. And so I think that it's totally possible that there's, there are more pieces of that, those regulations that could be improved, amplified now that we've had more experience with urban agriculture in Boston and the community's developed and advocates have, a lot of things have been tried. So I think it's very possible that there could be more improvements made across this area of work.
Great. Well, looking forward to that conversation. I don't think I have any more first-round questions. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your presentation. It was informative in this map. I know my eyes are going, but it's kind of interesting. I'm surprised at the neighborhoods that they are forbidden. So one question I have is like, what and why? Why is Port Norfolk completely allowed? Like South Boston waterfront, Chinatown, North Station, right? There were neighborhoods I was surprised were green. I was thinking that was the forbidden section, right? And then others that, most of downtown is conditional. So do you know why originally those neighborhoods were, or those sections of the city were allowed?
Well, I can speak to that briefly. I don't know the answer why, but I do know that the map and the distinctions within the map precede the development of the establishment of Article 89. So the Article 89 laid out the regulations for like what would be allowed in for what restrictions did you have to meet to have a conditional use permit. But it did not. The map predated is based on the base code and earlier zoning articles and regulated the keeping of small animals and was sort of Article 89 came on top of that. That's what I know about that. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Chris. But I could look into more about the.
Yeah, it's just interesting to
Yeah,
see. But
I
if
think
you're
it's
saying
very-
that it kind of predates
Yes,
it,
like
yeah.
quite historical reasons. Yeah.
And I bet when the beekeepers, lovers speak, we'll hear more about it.
Yes.
But the question I have also is, like you mentioned, Chris, that there aren't many complaints. You haven't filed really any fines against people who do keep beehives. But what do you think the biggest concern from neighbors, right? Because usually the pushback is neighbors don't want a beehive in their neighborhood. Maybe they don't want their next door neighbor to have a beehive, which I think is a separate, at least in my mind, is a separate conversation than can people have like chicken coops or, other types of animals. To me, bees seem very different than other animals some people would keep. So do you know what the fear or the concern from many neighbors would be?
I think the concern of most neighbors is worries about being stung. And I think that's where the setbacks can be very useful, and there's other strategies you can use in terms of where the hives are pointed. And I think also a big component of the how to address that is education, and that's something that we're hoping to do at Grow Boston is like provide a lot more public education around bees, because as the counselor, maybe more than one counselor said, that bees are not aggressive unless you are interfering with them. Yeah. So as long as they're far enough back that they're not easily interfered with, it shouldn't be an issue.
Which is good, because I know when we have well-attended rat hearings, which ISD comes out to, usually most, if not all of the counselors come because it's a big concern in the city. It is about that information and those infographics, and getting that information out in a way is important. So I think with this, it would be important too, so that residents know that there isn't a fear, or that they have the information so that they can make educated decisions. But that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Murphy. I only have one question. I think you answered a number of questions when Councilor Louis-Jean and Councilor Bach asked. It sounded like some of the edits are more form rather than substance. But one of the questions that I do have is the specified amount of feet that are detailed in this ordinance. Does that meet sort of what the BPDA and the ISD? Is there any flags on that, or does that work?
Our existing fees for building permits are a combination of administrative fees and cost of work.
Not fees, sorry, feet.
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 Oh, feet? No.
Yeah, all right, great. Distance, essentially.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. All right, that's basically it. I think the rest of my questions would be for the second panel. I'm not sure if anybody has anything for the administration before we bring advocates up. Oh, and Councilor Coletta is with us Sorry, I missed you out of the periphery. Any questions?
Briefly,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, opening's fine.
Thank you, Chair. And apologies for being late, and I've been listening in and trying to make sure that I had a background of the conversation. I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to say that I'm extremely supportive of this put forth by my council colleague, Louis Jean. Said it when you first put it on the floor that it's incredibly savvy to remove it from the zoning code to the municipal code. We have the Gardens of Charlestown that has a hive, and it's beloved by everybody and used as an educational tool for some of our families and children. So the more that we can expand this and give that opportunity to everybody, the better. So I'm just here in support and look forward to hearing from the advocate panel. But thank you both for your work on it as well.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. Thank you to the administration. I'm going to let Councilor Louis Jen go.
Yeah, I'll just say, Council Bach, I take your compliment of me being a lawyer and the drafting being perfect. Also, my policy director, Jesse, is a lawyer who helped work on this. We actually lifted most of the regulations just from what existed in zoning with a few tweaks here and there. And I say that because we don't have in the city, it probably exists, and we have experts here to say exactly what we need to ensure safety for this number of feet away, this number of setback, this distance for a flyaway. And so I think it's important that we're going to hear from the advocate panel to really think about what these regulations should and shouldn't be. Again, New York City, there aren't any regulations. Other cities do have more regulations around distance and things of that nature. And so I think a working session will be good for us, especially after we hear from the experts who are the beekeepers themselves about what works best. So just wanted to be responsive to that, put that on the record, and to thank you again, Chris, and Shani, for engaging with us even prior to this about what those regulations should look like, where you're agnostic, and the path forward.
Thank you both. I'm releasing both of you so that we can have our next panel of advocates.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. If Val Mayo, Vice President of the Boston Area Beekeepers, Bill Perkins, owner of the Agricultural Hall, Noah Wilson-Rich, President of Best Bees, and Larry Vandy Venter, board member of the Boston Area Beekeepers. If you can take your seats. And I see that my list actually has Jim Kirker as a panelist, but is he public comment? Is he providing public comment, or is he a member of the panel?
I'm virtual.
Good to have you with us, Mr. Kirker.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're coming in clear.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And so I'm going to hand over the mics to our advocates so that you can introduce yourself. If you have an opening statement, please share it. We'll go in order of who's here before us, and then Mr. Kirker can be last, and then we'll go to the counselors for questions. I don't know if there's a pre-selected, do you have an order of preference? I don't know if you have an order of preference amongst yourselves. Otherwise, we could just start from left to right.
Sure. My name is Bill Perkins. I've been a beekeeper in Boston for 10 years now, and I own a shop in Jamaica Plains, Stony Brook neighborhood called Agricultural Hall, where I offer supplies and resources to help people explore many of the different agricultural endeavors that they can do within the city, including beekeeping. I'm also vice president of the Boston Area Beekeeping Association, and a group that represents, we have 800 people or more on our regular mailing list, but we represent about 200 people, mostly beekeepers. Annually, we pool our honey together and sell it through the Boston Nature Center at the farmers markets at sort of a cut rate price. So if you've been to the Mattapan Farmers Market or Eggleston Square, which is now at Community Servings, and a couple of other places, that's honey from Boston. On behalf of myself, and I think it's easy to say, all of the several hundred beekeepers peppered pretty evenly throughout every neighborhood in Boston, many, many thanks to Councilperson Louis Jiyun for drafting this proposal, and Councilperson Arroyo for his work moving this ordinance forward, and to all those who are co-sponsoring, including Kenzie Bach and Councilperson Coletta, who's here. We feel that a veil is lifting. Personally, for me, there are many important reasons why bees help us, but in the city, education is their greatest gift. Bees somehow magically amplify the natural world. They pull us into this world of color and symmetry and sound, and I've spent endless hours eagerly introducing hundreds of people, from seniors and senior centers to daycare students, daycare centers, into this world. And everyone sort of willingly follows along. There in the bees world, we find the reason to care about bees, our relationship to nature, and to what it means to respect and preserve nature. I know it sounds a little like a stretch, but a single visit inside a beehive is transformative, and we desperately need a transformation in how we live with nature. I believe this legislation will work as is, but should you choose to consider fine-tuning the ordinance, I have submitted a few comments to Jesse, who works with Councilperson Lejeune, and I think we'll all probably be able to help in any way you might want us to. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill said a lot of what I would have said, but I didn't prepare anything. I'm just going to speak from the heart. First of all, I want to thank everyone for what you've done so far, just to get us to this point, because sometimes constituents don't feel heard. And I got to say that I feel heard. And I hope that, we continue along that path. So, my big reason for wanting to have beekeeping be legal is just, I want to be a good citizen and a good neighbor. I don't want to do something that's illegal. And I absolutely love beekeeping. It's in my DNA. Some of you may know that I'm a second-generation beekeeper. And so I'll probably always be beekeeping. I can just give you an example of something that I came across over the few years. A friend of mine in Revere had some fruit trees, and her fruit trees were not producing any fruit until a beekeeper moved into the neighborhood, and now she had fruit. My concern is for bees, but it's for the entire environment. And the more we educate people about what's important in our environment, the healthier our planet can be, and maybe we can save the bees and save so many other things. So this is, educating people about beekeeping, allowing people to engage in a hobby like this, backyard beekeeping, brings people closer to the environment and to the planet. And so I hope this goes forward without so many restrictions where people are they're just kind of turned off from being able to do it. So, that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Val and Bill.
Thank you.
Is it all right to speak?
Yes, absolutely. We can go in order. You guys are doing great.
Thanks.
Everybody's doing great.
It's so exciting to be here and to meet you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. This is really taking a leadership role for the city of Boston on the global stage. It might seem like we're talking about bugs in our backyards, because we are, but the world is watching. And this is a really exciting moment, especially because I was here in 2013 for Article 89, and I was in the room for those conversations, as a lot of people were. That was a wonderful process, and yet it was part of a larger movement that today it's picking up the next step. And for that, it's really exciting, because I know what they were trying to do, and I know that maybe one person got through with ISD, but nobody's been able to apply, because I wanted to be a model and to go through the process to show people, hey, here's how it's done. I couldn't do it. I do have a PhD. So it's wonderful that you're picking it back up, and that's what matters, so that everybody can do this. So I prepared just a few thoughts here. Chair. So my name is Noah Wilson-Rich. I'm a co-founder of the Best Bees Company, where we have created hundreds of jobs for urban beekeepers, not just in Boston, but now in 22 other cities. We're proudly headquartered in Boston. I started this company in my South End living room with a Facebook page and no money. And I think it's an inspiring story for others who might also think about bees as a way to connect ecological and economic sustainability. There are so many other businesses like Agricultural Hall in Boston, and when you watch Shark Tank, they love, if you mention the word bees, they go for it. And there's a model in London where they have honeys from around the neighborhoods of their city. You can taste the neighborhood, and you start to meet people there and understand, well, what are you growing in your garden? What are the recipes? What's important to your heritage? How do we have a community that's built around this? And all those dialogues start right here. There are also other ways that governments have come in to support the economic aspects of sustainability, like New Zealand and Manuka honey, or even Champagne in France, where once you start to understand this is Boston honey, that brings a product to the global stage where you make it happen. And the science behind honey, it's what you're tasting. You can taste the terroir of Boston, and I think you can imagine all the different mixologists, bartenders and chefs who can start to work with it based on what's happening right here today. To further share what Boston has done for the urban beekeeping community in terms of leadership, there have been multiple nonprofits started here, including our own Urban Bee Lab research charity. The Boston Area Beekeepers Association has taken a leadership role in the Tour de Hives, which we haven't done in a few years, but that is a bike tour around the city where neighbors open up their yards or their rooftops and invite the community in and say, hey, these are my bees. Like, this isn't Godzilla. Come in, check it out. Let me tell you about them. Hundreds of people have participated, and that's also a model for building community. Classroom Hives is another nonprofit based in Boston that has published curriculum from Boston Public School teachers in a book chapter we wrote with Boston College. That's an amazing focus on our local education system, even though those teachers had to do it in a way that wasn't necessarily sanctioned. It wasn't, that you shouldn't do it, but these teachers really took the lead and taught students in a very different, unique way. I've also shared our research data multiple times in the TEDx Boston stage. So cut me off if I'm running out of time here, but I wanted to just share a couple other things here. So we've added research beehives at educational institutions in Boston, which we're known for, including at Simmons University, where there are students doing active research right now with their rooftop bees. That research focuses on urban beekeeping as a scientific model that currently, with beekeeping not being permissible, limits our scientific understanding of our environment. So those students are looking at honey and understanding what other species of pollinators have also interacted with flowers in our neighborhoods. So we're getting a bigger sense of the biodiversity. That's what's pollinating our food system. And because beekeeping is happening at these educational institutions, National Geographic highlighted Boston's urban beekeeping as a model for other cities in 2018. And I just completed a contract with the federal government on pollinator analysis across cities nationwide as well, all based on the Boston model. So we're doing a lot. We've kicked off the East Boston Public Library, RFK Greenway, formerly where I-93 was. That's now a pollinator habitat. Fenway Park, Harvard Business School are great models. And the community garden system, which is one thing I haven't seen addressed here. So community gardens have a selective enforcement of beehives. They have cited Article 33 in the past. That's one thing I didn't see addressed in the current documents here today. So I just want to call that out. Seattle is a great model that promotes beehives in community gardens. San Francisco is another city where beehives are allowed by right, with nothing required there. New York City in 2010, we've mentioned legalized beekeeping. Boston 2013. Los Angeles in 2015 legalized beekeeping in a unanimous 15-0 vote in the city council. So another great model there. Denver is something to look at as well, where they have a green committee that incentivizes ecological behavior. So there are some benefits to businesses, to rooftops, to homes for doing green things like this. And the legacy of these decisions, as we're seeing here, remain on the books. So Los Angeles is a great model. September 4th, 1854, bees first came to LA. June 10th, 1879, bees were banned. And that law to make the bees illegal in Los Angeles on June 10th, 1879, remained on the books until 2015. Just because nobody did anything about it, despite it being a unanimous vote, Republicans and Democrats, everybody coming together for it, these laws matter. And that's what we're here today to understand. Why does Boston have illegal beekeeping, especially in areas where people are struggling for access to food? So this is really important. I just want to add a couple other topics here. There are some models that are good, as we've shared. There are also some models that are bad. And without naming names, which we can do offline, there are 3 cities that come to mind. One of them is bad because it has a very large distance between neighbors required for bees. So only the wealthy property owners with large aspects of land can have access to pollinators. Another city has a $2,000 permit. And a third city requires beekeepers to tell their neighbors, although it doesn't matter what the neighbor says. So I call that an FU clause, so be wary of that. Another aspect of what I've seen here is in the documents, no hive shall be located closer than 10 feet from a public sidewalk. That's something that we could consider adding some clarity to. Let's say if there's a wall or another barrier or a big slope, so it's maybe right close to it, but very high up. There's some ways we can clarify that. Other than that, I think you really got it right. I think that in terms of the science, it's important to acknowledge here some controversy on the topic. What you've done really well here is limited the number of beehives. Right now, the ordinance says to 3. That gives flexibility for most beekeepers who will have 2, sometimes 1. But then if a hive swarms, beekeepers are your friends. The Boston Police and the mayor's office used to call me anytime there was a swarm so that we can just reach out to the community and pick it up. So having that extra third allowed is very important so that we beekeepers can support the community. And I think the next step is to incentivize the plants for foraging habitat to make sure that there are enough diverse foraging plants for bees to thrive. So other cities like Chicago, Portland, and Denver could be good models to understand the gardening aspect. In closing, I wanted to just recognize the other people here. Whenever you allow some beekeepers to speak up, you then inspire others. And so it's been wonderful to see Shawnee Fletcher, Val Mayo, Bill Perkins again, who I've had the opportunity to connect with about bees. Thank you all for your attention. I know you have a lot going on.
Thank you. That was great. I see why these things go on Shark Tank the way they do. Right now, our viewers are furiously Googling those conditions to see which cities dropped the ball. So I'll connect with you offline on that. And I will just say that I think the aspect that our communities may also make some profit on this, I think especially since we've done home kitchens or residential kitchens, I think that's a fantastic aspect to this. One of the companies that I used to frequent was a company known as Bee Raw that is now no longer producing, so I'm on the market for a new honey supplier. But thank you very much for your comments. That was very incisive. And so we'll go to our final, actually we have 2 more. Mr. Kirker, I didn't forget about you online. But if we can go to Mr. Van Deventer, then Mr. Kirker, and then to my council colleagues for questions. And thank you all, you're doing fantastic. Bees have no better advocates.
Okay. First, thanks to the councilors, Ruth Z., Lejeune, Arroyo, and Bach, for your leadership in this matter, which is extremely important, and the rest of the sponsors as well. This important revision of Boston's ordinance regarding the keeping of bees is crucial. The many critical reasons for promotion and facilitation of beekeeping in Boston are very well summarized in the ordinance introduction. I very much appreciate this opportunity to provide input to further the refinement of the ordinance to ensure that it comprehensively covers both the public safety of beekeeping and the interests of all beekeepers in Boston and its diverse neighborhoods. I'm providing my input as a citizen beekeeper in Boston. A little bit about my background. I'm a fully retired hobbyist beekeeper in my 8th year of beekeeping and typically manage up to 12 full-size hives and from 6 to 12 half-size, what we call nucleus colonies. Because my yard in West Roxbury is not suitable for beehives, all of my hives are located in remote locations. 3 in the Trustees of the Reservation Leland Cooperative Garden in Jamaica Plain, 1 at the Boston Area Beekeepers Association Baba Apiary at the Boston Nature Center, and 9 in the Trustees of the Reservation's City Natives Learning Garden in Mattapan, and 3 on a private property in Dover. I am enormously thankful and appreciative of being able to have bees in all these locations. I routinely provide beekeeping public education opportunities at Leland Cooperative Garden, the BNC, City Natives Learning Center, and other ways. I participate in the BNC BABA Meet the Beekeeper public education that Bill spoke about, where we dive into hives with up-close and personal inspections with adults and children. I participated in the BABA Tour de Hives, which was also mentioned by Bill. And I'm also actively mentoring every year about 5 to 10 new beekeepers and continue to provide ongoing guidance to those beekeepers through their second and years beyond. My beekeeping goals are simple: foster an appreciation of bees and their benefits, the successful husbandry of about 1 million bees, maximizing overwintering survival, and promoting sustainability of local New England bees through beekeeping education. It's not about the honey, although locally sourced honey, for which there is a very high demand in this area, is a wonderful contribution from the bees to local agricultural sustainability. Now, my comments on the ordinance are really in two places. There's other things that all of us beekeepers have been collectively discussing, but essentially, the two that I'm most interested in addressing, I will tell you about. First, the number of hives in Section C, Regulation I. The 3-hive limit may be appropriate for a residential situation, but I really see no reason why it couldn't be a greater number, up to 5 or 6, if done within the guidance framework of the setting, okay? So I don't have anything troubling about that other than that comment. It would be the 3 hives severely restricts what Noah was alluding to with community gardens and my apiary in Mattapan. It would essentially prevent me from keeping bees there in the Learning Center at City Natives. In similar respect, it would limit the amount of bees we can keep at the Baba apiary. We have about 15 hives at the Baba apiary right now. So some accommodation for the number of hives located in what I call non-residential settings, nonprofits such as the Trustees of the Reservation, City Natives Learning Center, and the BNC, and community gardens should be incorporated in the ordinance. That's my comment. I would suggest to add a limit for the number of hives on any non-residential setting to a maximum of 15 as a reasonable number. The second area that I want to comment on is in this first section of the article, personal consumption and restriction. Historically, locally sourced honey produced by Boston beekeepers has been highly prized by our neighborhoods, and the full seasonal demand is always unmet. We can't create enough honey to satisfy the demand. Commercial sales of honey have occurred in a number of ways that Bill mentioned, so I won't belabor that. There's bulk honey to restaurants, at all manner of farmers markets in the area. It's historically been practiced. The Allendale Farms is another one that's important, the oldest local city farm in the country. So all these venues foster a strong sense of community connection and pride as they provide neighborhood-sourced honey to Bostonians. The ordinance as written limits the keeping of hives to personal honey consumption. If commercial sale of locally sourced honey is not allowed by this ordinance, it will deprive our local neighborhoods of access to this important honey source and mean essentially that any non-local honey supplier could sell in these venues to the exclusion of local beekeepers. All sales activities of local beekeepers should be allowed to proceed as historically practiced. And my suggestion is to remove the restriction to personal consumption. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Bill. Those are very thoughtful, and I appreciate you giving us feedback. The City Council usually has something called working sessions where we go over the regulations, but you are done some of the homework for us, and I appreciate your comments along with everyone else. Chair Arroyo had to step away, and so as the sponsor of this ordinance and text amendment, and as the Vice Chair of Government Operations, I'll be taking over for the moment. Jim Kirker, thank you for being here, Jim. We'll now turn to you for any comments.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jim.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, great. All right. I wanted to thank you guys for doing this. I think there was a question about why nobody had been applying for beehives. I think the answer to that is most people, including myself, thought that keeping bees in Boston had been legalized, and including Rob Consalvo, by the way.
Yeah.
He was actually shocked when I told him I'd quit keeping bees because I found out it was illegal, and he thought that Article 89 made. So I think that answers that question. I'd also like to thank Councilor Bach for stealing my joke about putting a bug in your ear, but whatever. I just have a very quickly here. I wanted to expand on some of the things that have been talked about, and one of those things is habitat. And I think that something that is hopefully will be brought up more often, and that is the importance of native bees as opposed to honeybees. Native bees and native pollinators actually do more pollinating, and we're losing habitat like crazy. And honeybees hive, they can be replaced yearly. Native bees and native pollinators don't. They nest, and they nest in leaves, they nest in fallen leaves, they nest in wood and stuff like that. And we are losing habitat, and that is killing off the native bees and the native pollinators. So I think we need to, as well as talk about making honeybee keeping legal, we need to start talking about how we're going to save habitat and how we're going to keep our native bees and our native pollinators going. They really, really need help. And this, in my opinion, is in many ways more important towards as far as climate change and all that kind of stuff is related. But I don't really have a lot to add to as far as the regulations that you guys have put forth. I think it's been covered fairly well. And I hope this passes. And I would hope at some time if Councilor Ruth Z, if you want to meet and start talking about habitat loss and native bees, I would love to do that at some point too. So that's all I've got to say, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karker. I'm now going to go,
As far as, I just wanted to point something out. As far as I understand from conversations that took place early on in this process, if someone wanted to have more than 3 hives, they could apply for an exemption. Is that still the case? Or that was going to put...
Yeah, I'm not, so, do you want me to? So I think this is a great conversation, and I think what Bill mentioned about, we've had conversations internally about, we want this when we move it into municipal code to capture as many beekeepers as possible, to decrease the need for anyone to apply for a variance, so long as whatever we establish jives with everyone and isn't creating any issues with neighbors. And so we've talked about increasing the number of hives kept residentially permissible, to increase that number so that to decrease the likelihood of folks needing to apply for a variance, if that makes sense. So Bill, what you said, increasing, we're looking at increasing to maybe to 5 or 6.
This is Larry.
Sorry, Larry. Larry Bell, sorry to switch up. Larry, we've talked about that internally about moving that number up to capture to as wide a net as possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, my comment would be, the thing that I'm hopeful for is that we're tweaking this. We're going to tweak it to get it done, and that's what I'm hearing.
Yep.
And that's what I'd like to see, because if we get it really right as we can get it with collaboration, then we're there, and we don't need other things like variances or
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even the personal consumption, even in my notes that we have here already on the ordinance, we're saying consider striking because we don't think that we need to have it. So
that's great.
You spot on, Larry, with all of your comments and things that my office has been thinking about how to make it better from what it already was on the zoning code and what we've been able to brainstorm.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you. So I'm going to go, actually, you're first, so
Yeah.
floor is yours.
Great, thank you. And I just want to thank the panelists. This is like an enriching conversation about bees. Again, I'm not a bee expert. I like my local honey and I like my Manuka honey, right? Because there's been such a great job with marketing Manuka honey from New Zealand and the health properties. So I just got more Manuka honey last week. And if we could do that with Boston, I think that would be incredible. Now, were you talking about how we could continue to be a leader here? And I just think about the richness of this conversation and about how we've made space for it here and all of the different levels and how important it would be to be able to dive this deeply on so many topics that are important to our environment and to our city. I have a number of questions that I have for our panel, because I think of this as not only questions on how to get it right, but there are folks watching at home who want to better understand beekeeping, right? Because to take away from this, sometimes fear induced by media about swarms and about picnickers being attacked by bees. And so I just wanted to explain a few things in the regulations that we will likely keep. If anyone wants to explain what a flyaway is and why a flyaway is important to beekeeping.
Well, as I see it in the legislation as it was presented, I think a flyaway was the the flyway, sorry, was the path that the bee takes either out of or into the hive. And I would encourage that the word barrier be included next to flyway, because what you're trying to do is to get the bees to come out and then change their normal flight pattern if you want to restrict it for one reason or another. By putting a barrier several feet in front of the hive, the bees exit and then have to find their way up and around it. And so it gets them elevated and out of the immediate vicinity.
I like to add a comparison with the Jetsons. Maybe I'm dating myself. Maybe the viewers have seen. So it's the highway in the sky. You just picture it not going towards the sidewalk or towards your neighbor, but up and away. And there's a lot of tricks to just point that highway where the bees go straight up and not out.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Jim.
In Article 89, is there not already a thing about a barrier that has to be within 3 feet, I think, and 6 feet tall? Is that not included in the new ordinance?
It is included, Jim.
Okay.
It's included. Just wanted to explain for folks who may read the ordinance when it comes out that they have some context for what a flyway is.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim. The second question is, a lot of folks here in the city or urban dwellers believe that they don't have enough space to keep bees. How true is that statement, and what is the minimum area required to be a beekeeper?
I'll take a stab at that. It doesn't really take a large area because, the regulation allows a side yard, for example, that's beside the house, or the rear yard, which is, of course, in the rear. And usually there's more room in the rear of a house, but the considerations are the direction that the hive would be facing. We generally try to go southeast to get the morning sun to wake up the bees. That's their alarm clock. So you don't need a lot of room, but you need to have it face that direction, generally speaking. You could put in a side yard that had, say, a 10-foot setback from the property line with and the sun, let's say, is coming from the southeast. It would be ideal because you could put it up against your house, aim it towards your neighbor, but put a barrier in front of it according to the regulations, and you've got 3 hives right there along the house and fully within the regulation. So it doesn't take a lot of space.
Thank you. Thanks, Larry. And I also should say, for the record, I want to thank Jim and Val for letting me visit their hives in Hyde Park, which to me was truly, me and my staff, which was truly, truly informative for me to see how delightful and how easy beekeeping can be if we make it easier for our residents. So thank you, Larry, and thank you to Val and to Jim. How far do bees, will they have to travel for food here in the case of residents living in dense urban environments and the need to find flowers and food available around? How far will they have to travel, or do they have to travel?
Well, bees can travel 5 feet.
She's turning her mic on.
Travel 5 to 6 miles. Is it?
There you go. It picks up as you speak.
Oh, okay. I can hear myself now. They can travel 5 to 6 miles, but they generally like to stay close to home, so they generally like to stay within a mile or 2.
Great. So just in that, I'm thinking about, will there be a need? I mean, this could be a reason for us to, and I see Shani's still here, for us to be more intentional about making sure that we are building out areas, even in our neighborhoods, the ones that, especially our environmental justice neighborhoods that maybe don't have a lot of flowers, a lot of green space. It could be another case for us growing out those areas, because we need to make sure that bees don't have to travel far in order to access food. So.
I took the liberty of making a little map around Mattapan Square. My bees are in the center of this circle. I've got more copies of this for you. This circle is 6 miles in diameter. That's the average diameter for bees foraging. They generally forage from 1 to 3 miles from the hive center in any direction. And so that's, from looking at this, you can see there's a pretty big circle, 6 miles around Mattapan Square. And then the local honey that's sold, I'd like to point out, sold at the farmer's market that's 2 blocks from the hives that created it. But I've got more copies of this for you.
My policy director is coming to take it so that he can make some copies. Thank you, Larry.
I'm sorry, could I add one thing to that? And that is that bees in Boston get so much of their nectar from this three-dimensional nectar source called trees. And I know there's a lot of tree ordinance work ongoing right now, but I can't emphasize enough how important trees are to the foraging for bees. So,
Thanks. And Jim,
Can I add to that? Yeah, I think we ought to be encouraging more people to convert at least parts of their yards into rather large gardens and habitat with native wildflowers, I think, are something that really help. But you also might think of, I can't think of the town, but somebody posted something in Texas where all the dividers between in highway, not super highways, but something like Truman Parkway, where they have the divider there, instead of planting a couple of trees here and there, they've started planting native wildflowers on these things. And the results are spectacular. Not only is it beautiful, but you're creating a lot of habitat and creating a lot of places where bees will go to get their nectar and native bees will go to get their pollen. And so that's something that might be considered instead of just planting a couple of trees here and there. And the other thing is when you're planting native flowers, you don't have to worry about watering that much because they survive. They're more drought resistant and they consume a lot less water than say some beautiful flower imported from China or something like that. So, I mean, you may consider doing that, which would help the bees greatly, in my opinion.
Thank you, Jim. I just had a question for you, Larry, regarding the 6 miles diameter forage area. Do we take something for that? Given that bees normally travel around 1 to 2 miles. The fact that in Mattapan Square, it's that much larger. Is there an implication? Like, is there a conclusion we can draw from that, or is that just are you elevating that as something that is good?
No, that's the general behavior is the 1 to 3 miles from the hive in any direction, giving a diameter of about 6 miles.
Okay.
But I think the unique thing about that is it's amazing how many times they do it, and it's that far. The actual average distance, according to Tom Seeley, is 3.7 miles that they go. There's some that do closer, some that do further. They don't quite know who makes that decision, but that's their behavior.
Okay.
But these would be overlapping circles. This overlaps the B&C, so you have the hives at the B&C overlapping my city natives hives. And so you'll have these overlapping large diameter circles across our urban environment.
Great. Can I just jump in for a second?
The bees want to go as close as possible, so the more diversity of plants and things for them to draw nectar from, the closer they will stay. That's why, to Jim's point, it is good to have a diversity of plants and trees, save the trees, so that the bees don't have, the farther they have to fly, the more energy it takes. And the closer they are, it takes less energy and they can do more foraging if they can go 1 to 2 miles or 1 to 3 miles.
Thank you. Yeah, and so, as born and raised in Mattapan, live in Hyde Park, right on the line with Mattapan now, and I was just trying to see if there's an implication for Mattapan needing more diversity when it comes to trees. Maybe, Mattapan Square, we have the Neponset River, which is pretty well treed right there, but I know for other areas of Mattapan that there is there's barrenness when it comes to trees or parks, where there can be an argument made that it's an example of the need for us to be investing in more trees and diversity.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
More trees are definitely a big plus. The linden tree in particular, the bees just absolutely massively go to linden trees. And there's a bunch on Hyde Park Ave. And, if I was adding trees, that's a tree I'd consider to add a lot more of.
Great. Thank you, Larry. The chair is leaving, but he has a question. I'm going to actually pause go to...
One second. Yeah. So I'm actually, unfortunately, I have a very important thing I have to do right this second, but this has been really informative. I had one question that I'm gonna have Councilor Lujan ask me, because I think Councilor Bach also has something else. But my one question is, this has been incredibly informative, I think, for folks who are watching, and our hearings tend to be streamed sort of online and on TV at a later point. As a child, my parents gardened and did things like that, and so I think that has a very low barrier for entry. But if I wanted to do beekeeping, I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. And so I guess my question was going to be, for folks who are watching this, we want to expand the accessibility of beekeeping, and I think one part of that is letting people know how they can get involved in beekeeping, what resources are available to them, where can they learn how to do this, where can they learn how to get bees, and what the proper environments for that is, or are rather. But you can answer that after Councilor Bach's question. And I will be watching this on repeat, so I will get it, but I think it's important for the public to sort of know how to engage in this practice that they would like to. Thank you.
And I also have to I promised I would be in the Fenway in my district in a few minutes, which is going to be a stretch of time and space. But while I'm thinking of the Fenway, I just want to say like how exciting it was recently to have hives open up in the Fenway Victory Gardens. And so we're really grateful to the beekeeping community for supporting that. Obviously there's a ton of gardeners there, and so lots of people who are benefiting very directly from the pollinator garden that we've got there now, and the pollinators who are living adjacent to it. But I think I really want to second Councilor Arroyo's question, and just, you know, whatever we can do to use this platform to share with people how you guys got into beekeeping and what the best routes are. I think this is obviously a case where we're going to need all of that community engagement that you guys already engage in. It's just that we shouldn't also have kind of barriers and a difficult zoning thicket that then gets in the way of somebody who does manage to make that connection and be enthusiastic. So yeah, would love if you guys could talk a bit about that, but just really want to echo my thanks and say, I mean, it does seem like we already have some good points for the working session, and I feel like we're all, I don't have a good bee metaphor. I was going to just say we're all swimming in the same direction, flying in the same, buzzing in the same direction. I feel like fundamentally what you heard today, right, is that the city departments and the councilors are on the same page as wanting to support the growth of this community and make it easier. And so I feel like we've got a good flyway ahead.
We're creating a buzz.
Indeed, yeah.
No more. I'm not gonna do it to you.
So now, so I'm gonna sneak off in a second, but if there's a chance to talk a little bit about that kind of experiential how to get into it thing, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Can I start about how I got into it, and then I got to go because I have a cat that I have to pick up some. My life revolves around cats. So, anyways, I started because of Val. We talked about keeping bees for years, and finally one day she called and said, "Jim, we're going to start keeping bees." And well, you know, nobody says no to Val. But anyways, it was kind of funny. I really got into it immediately. There really is something about getting into a hive and watching it, and just hearing the bees, the buzz with a happy hive is just, I find really calming. But unfortunately, my first hive died. The next year, I got the hive, and I decided to install it myself. And with my wife reading the instructions off the porch and laughing at me because every time I shook the bees, I went running away because they were buzzing around. I now understand that's, you know, they're not going to attack me or anything. But I got into it just because I find them fascinating. I can sit in front of a beehive and watch them literally for a half hour, 45 minutes, just watching them. And they are really just incredible creatures. And I think that if people go to the bee schools here, you know, Baba and stuff like that, and they actually start getting into it, I think that they're going to be fascinated by it too. And once they get over their initial fear, which everybody has, of handling the bees and what they're all about, I think that you are going to see an increase in beekeeping because it's hard to not love bees. But anyways, I have to go get some insulin for my cat, and I want to thank you guys for bringing this up like this, and I hope everything passes. And good luck to everybody. Just so you know, I'm moving to Norwood, so this won't be affecting me, but I do hope it passes, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and I want to thank you because, again, you were at the genesis of this with State Representative Rob Consalvo and Val. So just thank you for elevating this, and good luck with getting what you need for your cat. That was a great question that I also had on my list, because I think Beekeeping 101 is important to, again, get more beekeepers and to decrease any sort of fear that exists around beekeeping. I just have a few more questions, which I can, as the only counselor, it's our time now. Okay, so I'm wondering, and I think Noah or someone else already talked about this, but if you could talk a bit more about what a swarm is, and what do we do? What does it mean to be swarm aware, and what do we do when there is a swarm?
Sure. So to answer the question too about how to get into beekeeping, briefly, there's at least 3 ways. So bostonbeekeepers.org is the website that anybody who wants to become a beekeeper should go to learn. They offer a beekeeping school. So that's the Boston Area Beekeepers Association is the name of the group, bostonbeekeepers.org. You'll meet some wonderful people like Val here, who helps run the bee school. It's taught by Bill and yours truly, and me 10 years ago. So bostonbeekeepers.org, check that out. You can also just connect with a beekeeper who's a member there if you have a property and you want to open it up but you don't want to do the beekeeping, and that's another option for somebody to get involved, and that's, I think, how a lot of people got acquainted with bees. And then, of course, 3, there's a beekeeping service, beekeepers for hire, like a pool service or a lawn care service, and there are a few options there. So at least 3 options to get started. In terms of your question about a swarm, so a swarm is a reproductive process. It is when a beehive has a baby beehive. And as a scientist myself, there is a concept called superorganisms. And a superorganism is, instead of one individual, like each of us, or one human, it's when the group of us is an individual. And that's a honeybee hive. A honeybee hive is really an individual because the queen is like the ovaries, the workers are like the blood cells, and there's actually teenager bees that hang out at the entrance, and that's like the skin. So when that one group has a baby, that typically happens in the springtime, that is a swarm. And you see half of the bees go off, and they don't have a place to move to. If you've ever had a friend who moved to California without a job or a home yet, and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Okay, that's like what a swarm is. So they don't have a place to go, so they'll land on a tree, they'll land on a stop sign. In Boston, there was a famous incident like 2013. I was trying to go to a Red Sox game. I got a call from the mayor's office saying there's a swarm of bees that landed on a yellow car. You have to go get them, and I was like, I got to go to the Sox game. I get there. It is typically a basketball shape and size. That's what a swarm typically looks like. Very, very gentle, but of course it's strange to see. You're like, oh my gosh, there's all these insects. But they eat a lot of honey, and so they're like after Thanksgiving meal. Like, they just don't touch me. They're really not inclined to sting. They just are like, we're looking for a home. So I get there, the Boston police are there, and they were like, come to the side. Do you think that there's a dead body in the car? And I was like, I think they think it's a flower. It's a yellow car. So I just brushed the bees into a Tupperware and took them home with me to Dorchester, went back to the Sox game, had a great time. But the crowd around was like, what is happening? And so swarms are very important to talk about. People will ask, swarms can and do happen, but beekeepers know how to handle it. And that's really the importance of legalized beekeeping for all. So you have more people who can handle a swarm rather than throwing a police officer or a fireman or anybody else in who have a lot of other things to do.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you.
I just want to say, when I tell people about swarms, I always say, the bees pack up all their stuff and tell their queen, we're going to find another place to live. And that's right. They took all their honey. They'll leave a few bees in there. They may leave, some queen cells in there, and they're off. Yeah. They're gone. So,
thank you for those, both very descriptive. One other question I have regarding keeping: will someone with only one hive be able to harvest honey, and how much can they expect?
Yes, somebody with one hive can expect to harvest honey. Typically not the first year that they start out, because the bees are building up their resources and the colony size, but sometimes, and definitely by the second year, yeah. And pretty much, that goes for pretty much everywhere in Boston except maybe downtown, where the forage, the food that the bees are looking for, is a little scant, so.
Thank you, Bill. Sure. And then one other question for Noah and for anyone else who wants to add. You mentioned something, we as a city council, we're here to draft policy, to make the city stronger, to make sure that we are building an inclusive, resilient city where everyone's able to meet their basic needs. And you talked about jobs, which is really important. You talked about how beekeeping creates jobs for our residents. So if you could talk a bit more about how this could be an economic generator, a job creator, making it easier to keep bees. I'm curious to hear. Of course, there's a lot. There's environmental benefits or personal benefits, which I think are really important. I think Jim talked about the mental health benefits, just like the joy you experience just by watching the hives. But there could be economic benefits as well, and I'm curious to hear a bit more about that.
Absolutely. There are huge economic benefits from multiple angles here, which I find so exciting as a scientist, because I always think about how do we apply data to make our lives better and more equitable and make our cities more just and sustainable. And so going back to a question about, well, how much can one hive do? On average, we've seen maybe 10 pounds of honey produced in excess per beehive per year. And so if you think about a honey bearer, that's maybe 20 honey bearers. We see across the United States, 1 out of every 2 beehives does not make it through the year. And in recent years, we've had more bee deaths in the summertime than in the winter. So a sunny summer day can be more toxic to a bee in America than a cold New England blizzard. And that's just insane. And so by acknowledging this as a community and coming together and saying, well, okay, where are bees thriving? Where are they doing better? We're able to see places like Boston. They're doing great in areas like Mattapan and Dorchester and areas where you had called economic justice areas, or EJ.
Environmental justice, but yeah.
Environmental justice, thank you. When we look...
That are often economic justice neighborhoods as well, right? There's a lot of parallel, but yeah.
Exactly. And so when we see, well, what's working in those areas, and when we notice, actually, pollinators are doing great there. And then as scientists and as student interns from local schools, from kindergarten, the Boston Public School system, all the way up through high school, through the college level, when we get together as a community in what we call citizen scientists, when we work together with adults like the Boston Area Beekeepers Association, and we say, well, let's get together even with the media, like whether it's TED or National Geographic, as we did, and we surveyed as many beehives as we could find, and we said, where are they thriving and where are they not? Why are they thriving there? And we looked at the honey, and we found 8 times greater plant diversity in these EJ areas of Boston compared to the surrounding suburbs. 8 times more flowers. And that gives a totally different perspective on areas where if we're just humans, boots on the ground, we're missing a lot of stuff. The bees are doing surveillance and they're giving us information. Well, what's growing? What should we plant more of? What are, like as Jim was saying, the native plants that we should promote? And so for jobs, for myself, founding and as the CEO of the Best Bees Company, we have created over 200 jobs for people who didn't have beekeeping experience to experts, to master beekeepers. And this helps to green our communities. It gives us more data. We don't sell honey because many people do. We don't teach beekeeping because others do. So from selling honey to mentoring as a service to a beekeeping service, these are 3 different industries. I've also consulted with the World Bank and met with governments of Haiti. I've worked with the country of Benin, Ethiopia on that model from New Zealand. So I don't know how much you paid for Manuka honey.
Too much.
I'm going to tell you it was like 3 times
$40.
I mean, isn't that crazy? Yeah. Even for fundraisers for schools, we're seeing in Canada, where because beehives are very common at schools there, they have different funding systems, people often pay $100 per jar of honey as a fundraiser for schools. So we can think about this in many different economic generating ways, and that's just from a box of pollinators. We haven't even talked about the gardens yet. We haven't talked about green rooftops. These are industries that we know are inevitably going to happen around the world because we see them happening in parts of Europe. We see the United States as empty rooftops. The built environment as we have it replaced green space. And in this brutalist building, the Boston City Hall, we know the rooftop is empty because I have consulted here. Only certain parts of it are good for solar panels, some parts for windmills, and anything else that we don't know what to do, we call it pollinator habitat. Those all equal jobs. That advances science and that inspires people to see our city and these EJ areas completely differently as assets. Those are the model neighborhoods to understand, well, what plants are growing there? How do we get more of them? How do we support plant and garden centers? And how do we leverage that historic knowledge of our communities and the people to say, well, here's what grew in my country. Here's what I like to cook with. Here's what you can plant too.
No, that's incredibly, thank you. I'm excited, and Shani's still here, I'm excited about the possibilities from your collective expertise, right? We're here to talk about ordinance and text amendment to make beekeeping easier, but I think this is just an example of how we can be more creative and how we can be building for the future here in our city, towards a green future, towards an environment centered future. So I appreciate those comments, Noah, and we will get to work on this legislation and other things that can make it easier and an economic generator here in our city, and to again get our own Manuka honey here in the city of Boston that I can purchase for $40.
And can I add one thing too? I just think there was a comment that you might not have heard from Larry earlier, which is we do see, we talked a lot about trees, but linden did seem to be a predominant source of Boston honey. And so maybe linden is our Manuka word here. And that's where we can rely on the science, and it tells people what Boston tastes like. And it informs, like with the federal government work that I did over the past year, where they have to add more green shade trees to parking lots. This informed them of what type of trees. The existing was called the P100 for the General Services Administration, didn't specify that. And that's where Boston can not only be a greener city with more shade, especially in the EJ areas that might not have a lot of shaded areas, but that can further support pollinator health. And it all starts with this little box of bees. So linden was the point of my comment.
Thank you, Noah.
Well, yeah, linden is definitely one of those, and I would add another, black locust, and they bloom at different times. The black locust is early in the year, in the spring, and the linden is more in the later, middle of summer. So, and there's two types of linden in this city, two versions. But those two trees could be signature trees for sure.
And I think in some discussions of the tree ordinance that's coming up, black locust is considered an invasive. So I don't know if that's been amended or not, but that should be kept in mind because it is native to the United States, even to eastern United States, but it is a very aggressive tree, but it can be tamed, and it's an important nectar source.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, Bill. I have one final question, and it's to uplift sort of one of the reasons why we're here. You know, we brought this hearing order to the floor last fall, and the Boston Globe did a really great highlight on the work that we were doing and a great highlight on Val that we have not talked about today. So Val, I would love it if you could talk about how you got started in beekeeping and how this, you know, you talked about being a second generation or third generation beekeeper. Second. Yeah, so I just wanted to give you the floor to do the work that you did when you were talking to Boston Globe, but so that those who are wearing at home can see how you, resident of Hyde Park, my neighbor essentially in Hyde Park, started.
I think it's been covered by everyone, but I'll just recap. A few years back, I've been thinking about beekeeping for a long time because my grandfather was a beekeeper, and I'd always heard about beekeeping since I was a little kid. But I was really busy working. I'm retired now, and I said to Jim, why don't we start beekeeping? We kept talking about it, and then finally, I found Boston area beekeepers, and that's really how beekeepers start. It's really good to take a class so you can learn best practices and, just the good, the bad, and the ugly about beekeeping. So I took a class at Boston area beekeepers with Bill, and Noah taught one of the classes. And after that, I started beekeeping on my own. So that's how, it's just as simple as that. That's how I got started. One of the good things about taking a class is that we can set you up with a mentor so that you'll have someone to, because beekeeping every day and beekeeping every second is different. Beekeeping is not only national, it's regional, it's different in each neighborhood. Sometimes it's different from house to house. So you come across things that you just don't know how to navigate, and having a mentor is good. But I would like to see a larger group of people in Boston that can be in our clubs, and be mentors and be on our boards and things of that nature. So I don't know if that's helpful. I don't have anything more exciting than that.
can join the family.
And I've been beekeeping on my own for 7 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Val. I don't know if anybody, this is your floor. If you wanted to add anything or make any closing statements, feel free.
I got one more thing to say. I'm sorry, Larry.
Okay.
I know people say that people are, somebody's a beekeeping expert. I just want to say that from what I know about bees, I don't know if anybody's an expert. The only creatures who are experts on bees are bees themselves. I can study something about bees for the next 50 years, and I don't think I'll ever understand everything. And that's why it's such a wonderful hobby and interest, because it just keeps you, you never lose interest.
Well, I'd like to speak on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice issues as it pertains to bees. I think the Boston Area Beekeepers Association is a great model that is working to reflect communities, and there's a lot more work to do. It's the newest beekeeping club in Massachusetts, which is a very old school type of association. Going back to, I think, Worcester County is over 100 years old as a club. And, it's a lot of old white guys in a field type of deal. And so with Boston, it's really helped, I think, make everybody see that this is an inclusive practice. Anybody who eats food needs bees. And so at least with the Best Bees Company, we're a proudly certified LGBTQIA+ owned company. And it's a safe space for people to come and just work to beautify our cities. And I wanted to just say that so people know this is a welcoming and inclusive practice and opportunity for jobs.
Awesome. Thank you, Noah. If there are no other comments, I just want to thank this panel. I want to thank you, Bill. I want to thank you, Val, Noah, Larry, Jim, who is here virtually, because I think what you just said, Noah, making sure that we are opening the doors to beekeeping, not only because of the benefits to environment, but as a justice issue, here's how you learn about the environment. As Val said, you never stop learning. And when we talk about the economic benefits, I think it's incredibly helpful. And so I want to thank all of you for the education that you've given me and education to others who are listening and here present. We will be in touch with you about the working session. I've written notes. I know my policy director has written notes about how we can strengthen the ordinance. And so we thank you for your feedback, because Val said that you may not be experts, but I know that you know more than me, every single one of you. And so as a lawyer and legislator, I'm here to write the laws, but they must be informed by those who know most, and that's all of you. So I thank you for your time. We're now going to turn it over to public testimony, and understand that there is one person who is here for public testimony. If there's anybody here who wants to come and speak public testimony, you can sign up or raise your hand, and Jesse will come and speak to you. But I have here listed for public testimony Melissa Hanningbian, and you can now come to the mic for public testimony, and you have 2 minutes to do so.
Hi.
Oh, 1 moment.
Excuse me. Good afternoon. My name is Melissa. I suppose it's very fitting that I'm offering public testimony today, because the name Melissa means honeybee in Greek. I will, however, spare everyone in this council chamber the plethora of bee puns that I could make, because I want to draw attention to the potential consequences of state-sanctioned, government-regulated beekeeping. I have a great admiration for bees as a species, and I wholeheartedly agree with all the benefits of beekeeping that were discussed here today. However, I think it is a grave mistake to allow the municipal and state governments, particularly Boston local government, to codify beekeeping regulations into Boston's local laws and Massachusetts legislature. When the government, in this case, the municipal government, enacts a law, then the implication is that municipal government agencies will be tasked with enforcing said law. And there was ample opportunity for the city of Boston to show solidarity with bees and to encourage people to learn more about how pollinators contribute to our society, our world, our city. February 2020, Francisco Guzman and Saeed Ahmed of CNN reported on an incident in Pasadena, California, in which a swarm of nearly 40,000 bees attacked police responding to a single bee sting report. A group of firefighters were responding to a single bee sting. Pasadena Fire Department's Public Information Officer Lisa Durian was quoted thusly, "I've been with the fire department 18 years and now responded to several bee incidents, but never to this magnitude. 5 people total were reportedly hospitalized following this incident." Matthew Busco, a 12-year veteran of the Pasadena Fire Department, recalled, quote, "screaming like his 7-year-old daughter," end quote, while bees attacked him, stung him while he ran for his life and tended to his engineer who was allergic to bee stings. As if firefighters did not already have an exceptionally challenging job, the first firefighter who arrived on this scene was stung 17 times. In 2010, a 2010 article from Firehouse magazine perhaps foreshadowed Local 718's current fight to remove toxic chemicals from firefighter gear. In Brevard County in Florida, firefighters were stung by bees while they extinguished a brush fire. Since fire gear does not completely cover all areas, bees found a way to get into their suits and also stung their exposed skin. This is not to stereotype bees as innately aggressive. The idea of the city of Boston potentially sending public safety personnel to literally police beekeeping in Boston seems like a manifold disaster waiting to happen. It presents potentially devastating harm for the bees, Boston residents, Boston firefighters, police, EMTs, and just even unhoused residents in Boston. Supporting private enterprises for beekeeping in the city of Boston might be more practical, but that's why you're all here, and I feel like you already have your decision made about what you're going to do with ordinances. Boston's honeybees and residents alike will not benefit from local government regulations that give the government pretext to snoop around their private residences. Consider this: when City of Boston Animal Control responds to calls for service to remove dead animal carcasses, current protocols prohibit animal control employees from entering into a private residence. So the callers are asked to put the animal carcass on the sidewalk or in the public ways of the streets because they're not going to come up even on your porch. While the power and control imbued to local, state, and federal governments during the COVID-19 pandemic might be as intoxicating and sweet as honey, bees have been around for nearly 130 million years. We've already figured out matriarchal, female-centered social structures since time immemorial. They don't need oversight and assistance and basically capitalistic interference from the city of Boston or any of the lovely business owners, private sector people here today. You know who could use resources and assistance, though? The residents of Mass and Cass and low-income working-class households all over the city. It is in everyone's interest if, and here comes the bee puns, it is in everyone's interest if the city of Boston just let the beekeepers be. Basically, the city of Boston needs to mind its own beeswax. And I'll close with a quote by a tweet from Dragonfly Jones. "Seems like the only way to not get attacked by bees is to be cool and calm around them. If you're frantic and shit, they'll light your ass up, and I guess I kind of respect how they'll beat your ass for fucking up the vibe." Thank you.
Thank you for your public testimony. Is there anyone here looking to offer public testimony? You can come down to the floor. You have... Typically, you're required to sign up, but we will indulge you. And thank you, Christine, for making that possible. If you could just, when you're on the mic, say your name.
I'm hard of hearing.
I have to turn the microphone on, so just wait a second.
All right. Well informed. Give me a lot. Whoa. I'll be short.
Okay. When you get on the mic, please say your name and your neighborhood.
Dennis Jackson, South End.
Thank you, Dennis. You now have 2 minutes.
My mother, mixed heritage, was mixed with Wampanoag and Narragansett. She taught me the facts of life as a kid. She said, when you walk the streets, don't step on the ants. Everything that has breath praises God and has a purpose. One thing I've noticed the last 20 years, unlike when I was a kid in the public housing in Providence, house flies are disappearing. Nobody's raising them, but I wonder what's going on. When we mess with Mother Nature, there's complications for generations. So what she just said, I never heard in my life. I avoid stepping on ants because they're going home to take care of their business. But I got to research what she just said, see if that's a problem in other states. But thank you for having this hearing.
Thank you, and thank you for your public testimony. With there being no more public testimony, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank our panel. Thank you for offering your personal and professional insights. I want to thank my staff, particularly Jesse Purvis, Policy Director, for really taking the lead in making this happen. I want to thank the administration, both Chris and Shani, who are here, and look forward to continuing to work with you. And want to thank Central staff for all the work that they do to make these hearings happen. Christine, Ethan, Megan, so many on Central staff, Juan, Ron, who without them, we would not be able to function as City Council. So thank you. Both of these dockets, both the text amendment to the zoning code and the ordinance, will remain in committee for us to have a working session. So dockets number 0138 and dockets number 0139 will remain in committee, and we will follow this up with a working session and hopefully be able to get this out of committee and on the floor for a vote pretty soon. So thank you again, everyone. And this hearing is now adjourned.